Hello, everyone. Welcome to the NFL Week 9 edition of the Player Prop Countdown, where I rank my top 10 player props for this week's NFL action. If you're looking for the Road to 272, where I break down my best bet for every single NFL game, you can check that episode, which was released Tuesday morning. You can check that out either on the Bacon Bets Podcast YouTube channel, which I encourage you to subscribe to, as well as wherever you get your audio podcast. Player props. Let's do a little bit of a recap. We're heading into the final week of the first half of the NFL season. Player props have not gone well the past couple of weeks. 4-6 last week, minus 2.69 units. Unfortunately, ran into some bad luck with Jordan Love. He was on pace to go over his passing yards total, which was one of my best bets last week. I think my number 2 ranked player prop, and he left with an injury. So that's 2, if not 3 prop bets I've lost this season on guys leaving the games with injuries. That is kind of the risk that you take when you take overs on prop bets. You know, the potential for an injury and a player leaving the game is baked into the line. It's just been bad luck that hasn't gone my way on any of my unders. It's only hurt me on a few overs. So over long term, I mean, if you bet the same amount of overs as unders, that's going to even out over the long term. But we've had some tough injury luck with some player props. Still, not a good week regardless. Even with that win, it would have been a losing week at 5-5. So last week, 4-6, minus 2.69 units. That brings us back into the red, unfortunately, for player props this season. 38-41-1, minus 2.2 units. Lots of football left. Lots of prop bets left. I feel confident this week with my prop bet selections. I think we can have a good week. We can get back to our winning ways on the player prop countdown this week. If you did listen to the Road to 272, there is one thing that I want to address, and that is the Sunday Night Football game between the Vikings and the Colts. I picked the Vikings in that game. That is my bet. I think it was Vikings minus 5.5. Since then, I think it was just earlier today, Wednesday, or was it Tuesday? Doesn't matter. It was after I recorded. They announced that Joe Flacco would be starting in instead of Anthony Richardson. A big reason for my bet on the Vikings on Sunday night was because Anthony Richardson was assumed to be starting. I just trashed him for 5 minutes, and then they decided to bench him. I don't know if maybe they were listening, or if they just watch football, because if you watch these games and you look at the metrics, you know how bad Anthony Richardson has played. So I've had some people ask me, sending me DMs, asking me if I still like the Vikings. It is now down to minus 5. It only moved half a point. I do still like the Vikings. At the end of the day, even with Joe Flacco starting, the Colts offense does kind of rely on being a run-first offense, especially when Jonathan Taylor is in the mix. And despite kind of giving up a big game to Kyron Williams of the Rams last week, I still have a lot of faith in the Vikings' run defense. If they can stop Jonathan Taylor, I think they're going to be in a great position to win this game and cover the spread. So to answer your questions, yes, even though Anthony Richardson is not starting, I still like the Vikings. Obviously, I would much rather have it at the minus 5 number that it is now, as opposed to the minus 5.5, which I got to that. But that is what it is. That's what happens when I have to bet on every game on Monday nights before we kind of get this kind of news. All right, let's get right into my top 10 player props. And then, of course, I always wrap up with my favorite DFS lineup for this week as well. But number 10, we're going to get through the props first. And this is my Thursday Night Football prop. I usually try to get at least one prop in for Thursday Night Football. Give the people who listen to this episode when it gets first released on Thursday, give them a little gift, a little bonus here, a little Thursday night play. It is the Texans and the Jets. I will go Dalton Schultz over 4.5 receptions at plus 126. Obviously, there is news with the Texans this week that Stephon Diggs is out for the year with a torn ACL. So now the Texans are no longer with their top 2 receivers. They don't have Nico Collins. They don't have Stephon Diggs, which reminds me a lot of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who, of course, lost Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. And then what happened in the following game? They targeted their tight end quite a bit in Cade Otton. Cade Otton for the Bucs had nine receptions, I think, 10 targets. That's to say, I do think especially when the top 2 receivers for a team go down, I think a lot of people might automatically want to then bet the over for kind of the next man up at receiver. But I think actually the position that gets even just as much of a boost, if not more of a boost, is the tight end. Because at the end of the day, the next 2 receivers that'll step up. Now, Tank Dell is a starting receiver caliber player. But at the end of the day, the other starting receiver, it's going to be a backup. Instead of trying to force the ball to a backup, teams sometimes would rather target a starter, but at a different position. That starter potentially even being a tight end or maybe even a running back out of the backfield. Not to say for sure that's going to happen. I'm not placing this bet just because the Buccaneers targeted Kate Otten a lot last week. But that is something that I've noticed over the years, that when, especially when two top receivers go down, you generally see the tight end's production go up at least a little bit. And Dalton Schultz has seen 6 targets already in 3 of the Texans' last 4 games. So this is plus money, by the way, plus 126. I do like this a lot at that price. I'll go Schultz on Thursday night over 4.5 receptions against the Jets. Moving on to number 9 player prop for the week, I'm going to bet on the Cleveland Browns running back Nick Chubb. He's now played in 2 games since returning from injury, and now I think is the time to bet on him. The Browns kind of slowly got him back into the mix based on kind of his media appearances this week and the trend through the first 2 games. I think now this is going to be the first game where we see a full workload from Nick Chubb, because in his first game, he played 36% of snaps. Last week, he played 59% of snaps, so a 23% increase there. And I think we'll see another increase this week up to high 60s, low 70s, 65, 68% of snaps would be my prediction for Nick Chubb. And last week, when he played 59% of snaps, he still was able to reach 52 rushing yards against the Ravens. Now the Browns take on the Chargers, and I do think, and I mentioned this when I was breaking down my best bet for this game, I do think we are going to see at least some regression from the Chargers defense this week, because the Chargers defense has had the benefit of playing some of the worst offenses in the NFL to start the year. So don't get scared when you look at the Chargers defensive metrics. I do think some regression is in store for them, because they played, once again, the Raiders, Panthers, Saints without Derek Carr, Steelers, the Steelers with Justin Fields, surprisingly actually not as good as they've been with Russell Wilson, and then the Broncos. So I do think we'll see some regression from the Chargers defense. I think this is a good time to kind of buy some stock in Nick Chubb. I will take Chubb over 52.5 rush yards. We are also going to take, for number 8 player prop of the week, I'm going to go Matt Stafford over 241.5 pass yards at minus 115. He and the Rams are, of course, playing against the Seahawks on Sunday, and you don't need me to tell you that this Rams offense and Matt Stafford, completely different with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua back in the lineup, especially Puka Nacua, who looks like the better receiver. He immediately had a massive game in his first game back for the Rams last week. Already, Matt Stafford, he's already averaging 238.7 passing yards per game, so just 4 yards below his total for this game. And he's been averaging 238.7 without having his top 2 receivers for the majority of the season. So now that they're back, he threw for 279 last week, well above his total. I think he's going to continue to put up some solid performances. And let's not forget, this Rams team got hot in the second half of the season last year. Not to say they're going to go on like a 7-1 run like they did last year, but the Rams team might be a team kind of like the Bengals that you kind of want to bet on as the season goes on. They're much more of a second half team than a first half team, and now they get to take on a Seahawks defense that has trended the wrong direction. The Seahawks defense in the first 4 weeks of the season, one of the better defenses in the NFL since week 5. They're dead last in opponent drop back success rate and 25th in opponent drop back EPA. So I think we can go ahead and fade the Seahawks defense against the Rams on Sunday. I'll take Stafford over 241.5 pass yards at minus 115. I meant to mention this at the top of the show, but I'm kind of having a little bit of an issue doing these player prop episodes on Wednesday night. Obviously, I want to get these done before Thursday Night Football, but I have run into an issue where some games just straight up don't have player props posted. There are props I want to bet this week, but as of Wednesday night, when I'm making my notes and making my picks and recording this episode, because of either potential injury news or, there's a couple games and players who just, for some reason, I don't know why they don't have prop bets posted yet, but this is becoming tougher and tougher to do on Wednesday nights. I've noticed it every week. There seems to be fewer prop bets available on Thursday nights. So that makes it tough because that limits the games and the players that I can bet on. I think there's like 4 different players I wanted to bet on, and I couldn't because no props posted. I'll say one right now, which doesn't surprise me why no player props are posted for Jordan Love yet. because obviously it's not confirmed if he's going to start. But whatever quarterback starts for the Packers, I'm going to take the under on his passing yards because the Lions secondary has been unbelievably good the past handful of weeks. That will not be a bet on this show, though, because those props aren't yet listed. But we are going to move on to the next player that I do have a bet on. It is Jalen Hurts and the Eagles going against the Jaguars. Now, based on previous weeks, you probably think I'm going to take Jalen Hurts to go over his passing yards total because of how bad the Jaguars secondary is. But I'm actually going to take Jalen Hurts to go under 26.5 pass attempts. I don't know if I've done a pass attempts prop yet this season. So once again, Hurts under 26.5 pass attempts. That is at minus 101, so basically even money. The Philadelphia Eagles, and I have talked about this in the past, they were stumbled out of the gates, but then 3 games ago, they decided to just run the ball. Run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. In that stretch, so in their previous 3 games, they have run the ball on 64.52% of their plays. That is the most in the NFL in that stretch by 11%. In those games, Jalen Hurts is averaging just 19.6 pass attempts per game, well below his set total against the Jaguars. So this is basically me trying to take advantage of what I think has been a complete change in the offensive game plan for the Philadelphia Eagles, and I don't think the betting market has adjusted. I don't know if that's because they expect them, to throw the ball more, that maybe it's just a small enough sample size 3 games, but right now this Eagles team runs the ball by far more than any other team in the NFL, and if that continues, I don't see a world where Jalen Hurts throws 27 times, especially in a game where they should get the lead. Because not only are they running the ball a ton, once they get the lead, that is all they do. So unless the Jaguars get off to a hot start, take a 2-touchdown lead, then the Eagles are going to have to throw the ball, and then this bet's going to lose. But if the Eagles get off, especially to an early lead, he's not going to come even close to 26.5 pass attempts. So, a little bit of a niche one here, but I do like it quite a bit. Jalen Hurts under 26.5 pass attempts at minus 101. My dark horse touchdown bet for this week, which is, last week I took Brock Bowers. It was, like the only tight end who didn't score last weekend was the one that I bet on, of course. He had his chances, just couldn't find the end zone. That sucked because that's kind of what's keeping me alive throughout the season are these dark horse touchdown bets. I have the World Series on in the background here, and they're just showing all the different celebrities. It's hilarious to me just to see random celebrities showing up these games, like John Travolta, Pat Sajak. Why do we care about Pat Sajak? Why do we care he's at the game? Isn't he like the Wheel of Fortune guy? Who gives a shit? What is this, the 90s? My dark horse touchdown bet for this week is going to be Wan'Dale Robinson of the Giants. Now, it's at plus 330 odds, so we're getting north of 3-1 odds. I get that it's Daniel Jones throwing the ball. That's probably why this is plus 330. But Wan'Dale Robinson, you might not know, tied for 3rd in the NFL in targets. That's probably shocking to you. He has the same amount of targets as CeeDee Lamb this season. He has more targets than Drake London. Which is crazy. Now, CeeDee Lamb has had his bye week, so, he's played in one fewer game, and Drake London, but he has the same amount of games as Drake London. Wan'Dale Robinson has seen more targets. Obviously, the games that Malik Neighbors missed, Wan'Dale Robinson saw, even more targets in those games, but still, for a receiver, for Wan'Dale Robinson to be tied for 3rd in the NFL in targets, he's getting a lot of balls thrown his way. Even against the Steelers this past Monday night, he had 5 catches. He did actually flirt with the end zone once, but couldn't quite get there. So you're telling me a guy who is tied for 3rd in the NFL in targets going up against a bad secondary in Washington is north of 3-1 odds to score a touchdown. I think there is plenty of value on this bet. Now, it hurts that Daniel Jones has to be the one throwing him the ball, but still. He's the one that's giving him all the targets, so I will take Wan'Dale Robinson as my dark horse touchdown bet at plus 330. Moving on to my number 5 player prop for the week. This should not come as a surprise to anyone because this is, I think I've bet this prop several times now this season, and it continues to cash, and I will continue to bet it. It is the over for the quarterback that has taken on the Ravens. Last week it was Jameis Winston. This week it's Bo Nix. I'll take Bo Nix over 213.5 pass yards. I'm going to sound like a broken record because I'm basically going to say the exact same thing that I've already said in several weeks now and in several episodes, both Road to 272 and the Player Prop Countdown. Ravens, 28th in opponent dropback EPA, 26th in opponent dropback success rate. They've given up 291.4 passing yards per game. And they have, here's a new stat I'll throw your way. The Ravens have given up 39 plays of 20-plus yards through the air. That is the most in the NFL by 5. The next closest are the Jaguars, who have given up 34 passing plays of 20-plus yards. So their secondary is atrocious. Truly might be the worst secondary in the entire NFL. Bo Nix is averaging 191.3 passing yards per game, so about 20 yards, a little bit more than 20 yards fewer than what his total is set up for this game. But we've seen an increase in his stats in recent weeks, and also, and this is another reason why, taking the quarterback that's going to face the Ravens is, a perfect bet, is because the Ravens are so good offensively. They're 9-point favorites in this game. Broncos are likely going to be in a negative game script. Negative game script is going to lead to more pass attempts. More pass attempts against a terrible secondary equals more yards. Check, 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 check. Bo Nix, over 213.5 pass yards. Don't overthink it. If it's not broke, don't fix it. And fading, or I should say betting on whatever quarterback to go over his passing yards, whatever quarterback is facing the Ravens defense, has worked all season. I will continue to do it this week. All right, number 4 player prop of the week. I kind of alluded to this earlier. It's Sunday Night Football between the Colts and the Vikings. The key to victory for the Vikings is to stop Jonathan Taylor. So that means I will take Jonathan Taylor under 71.5 rush yards at minus 115. Vikings defense, I tried this exact same bet last week on Thursday Night Football on Kyren Williams. He unfortunately had a really good game against the Vikings defense, but I'm not ready to give up on the Vikings defense yet, because despite that performance, Minnesota is still first in opponent rush EPA, second in opponent rush success rate, third in opponent yards per carry. So their metrics, they are still a top 3 run defense in the NFL. I will trust them on Sunday night, especially because last week against the Rams, if you're going to face Matt Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and Puka Nacua, you can't just focus on the run. Against the Colts, even though it's Joe Flacco starting, you can focus a lot more on just stopping the run. So I think the Vikings kind of allow the Rams to run the ball in a sense by focusing on trying to stop the pass, and they kind of got burnt. So if the Vikings kind of focus their talents to stop the run in this game, and they certainly should, I think Jonathan Taylor goes under this. So I'll go Taylor under 71.5 rush yards at minus 115. This is another bet that I placed last week that lost, but I'm going to go back to it again this week. It is Kyler Murray. I'm going to take him to go under 216.5 pass yards at minus 111. Might have been a little bit bold to do it against the Dolphins last week. This week, I think it's obviously a much better spot to take this bet, because he has taken on a Bears secondary, which has been one of the best, if not the best in the NFL so far this season. Second in opponent dropback EPA, sixth in opponent dropback success rate. Bears giving up only 199 passing yards per game. And Kyler Murray is averaging just 204.8 passing yards per game, well below, about 13 yards below his set total for this game. So it was a bad bet last week. He ended up throwing for like 300 plus yards. That's not going to scare me away from doing the same bet this week against a even better secondary in the Bears. Number 2 player prop for this week, I'll be betting on my guy, Bijan Robinson, over 73.5 rush yards at minus 111. The Cowboys' run defense is absolutely horrific. I could find 11 guys on the streets of Hell's Kitchen, New York, who could stop the run better than the Dallas Cowboys. It's truly disgusting to watch. Give up 4.8 yards per carry, 154.6 total rushing yards per game. They're dead last in opponent rush EPA, 31st in opponent rush success rate. It ain't pretty. Meanwhile, I mean, a lot of talk about Tyler Algier, and he has been getting carries at times, but his usage, I think kind of the public narrative around Algier is that he's taken up a lot more carries over Robinson than what he actually is, because Bijan still played 68% of snaps in each of the past 2 weeks, and he had 103 yards on 21 attempts a couple of weeks ago against the Seahawks. So the Falcons are still giving the ball to Bijan way more than Algier. He's still playing the large majority of snaps. And now he gets to play against a defense that he should absolutely just bulldoze. So I'll take Bijan over 73.5 rush yards at minus 111. My favorite player prop for this week is an under. It is in the Lions-Packers. I'm going to take Amon-Ra St. Brown under 6.5 receptions at minus 120. I'm shocked this number is this high. Lions, first of all, have become a run-first team. They have the 6th highest run play percentage. They run the ball on 50.12% of plays. And Amon-Ra St. Brown has just 7 receptions in each of has reached 7 receptions just once in his last 4 games. He's only reached it 3 times all season. And if you take out week 2 against the Buccaneers, where he saw 18 targets, he has only seen 5.66 targets per game. Now, the thing with Amon-Ra St. Brown is he has caught, I think he only has one, outside of that one game against the Buccaneers, I think he's only been targeted once where he doesn't catch it. So he catches basically all of his targets, but I don't think that's necessarily sustainable. So his actual reception numbers are right around what this total should be, but when the targets don't add up. It's pretty rare to see a receiver catch almost every single one of his targets. His target numbers, I think, is only like the 35th most targeted receiver in the NFL. And now he has to take on a Packers defense, which has done a very good job of forcing incompletions. They're 9th in opponent completion percentage, keeping teams to completing just 63.46% of passes. So I don't think the targets are there to justify Amon-Ra St. Brown having his receptions total at 6.5. So I'll take the under on that as my favorite player prop for week 9. All right, let's go ahead and quickly recap those, and then I'll get into my DFS lineup here. We got Dalton Schultz over 4.5 receptions at plus 126. Nick Chubb over 52.5 rush yards, minus 115. Matt Stafford over 241.5 pass yards at minus 115. Jalen Hurts under 26.5 pass attempts at minus 101. Wan'dale Robinson anytime touchdown, plus 330. Bo Nix over 213.5 pass yards at minus 115. Jonathan Taylor under 71.5 rush yards at minus 115. Kyler Murray under 216.5 pass yards at minus 111. Bijan Robinson over 73.5 rush yards at minus 111. And Amon-Ra St. Brown under 6.5 receptions at minus 120. All right, let's talk some DFS. If I can bring it up here. All right, there we go. My DFS lineup for this week, I entered a contest that is that includes all games Thursday through to Monday. So keep that in mind when you're looking at this lineup here. Obviously, if I'm going to take, once again, and I say this every single week that I do this show, my DFS lineup is going to line up with my player props. I like Matt Stafford to go over his passing yards total. I'm going to take Matt Stafford as my quarterback, especially at $5,700. Completely different player with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua in the lineup, and now he gets to take on a Seahawks defense that has been horrific the last 4 weeks. My running back, Bijan Robinson. If Bijan Robinson to go over his rushing yards total against the worst run defense in the NFL, if that's my number 2 player prop, I'm going to toss him into my DFS lineup. Another running back I'm going to go with that I hadn't mentioned when talking about player props is Austin Eckler. He's actually been averaging more yards per carry than Brian Robinson for the Commanders. He's also obviously a receiver out of the backfield, which helps in DFS. So for a cheap option at $5,300 against a Giants defense that has struggled to stop running backs. I mean, if you see it right there, if you're watching this on YouTube, they have they give up the 20th most points to running backs. So I think Austin Eckler is a pretty good cheap option at $5,300. Puka Nacua, I'm going to stack the Rams pass attack, so I'm going to stack Puka Nacua with Matt Stafford. Wan'dale Robinson, if I like him to score a touchdown, I certainly like him in my lineup at $5,800. Troy Franklin is a really cheap option that I like this week at $4,000. If you want to toss in a super cheap option, he, don't forget, led the Broncos in all of their receiver stats 2 weeks ago when they played the Saints. Don't forget that, of course. I like Bo Nix to go over his passing yards total against the Ravens defense for all the reasons I talked about earlier. Their secondary stinks, and the Broncos should be in a negative game script. That leads to plenty of opportunities for all the players involved in the Broncos pass game. At $4,000 for Troy Franklin. little bit of a boom or bust player, but that's kind of what you're looking for that price point. Cade Otton. I'm shocked that he's 4,500 considering he had, I think it was 11 targets, 9 receptions last week. The Buccaneers it seems pretty clear to me that with no Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, they are they're planning their whole offensive game plan around getting the ball into Cade Otton's hands as much as possible. So love Cade Otton at that price. And also he gets to take on the Chiefs on Monday Night Football, who have been the worst team in the NFL defending tight ends this season. So it seems like a dream matchup for Cade Otton. And then my flex, I put in Drake London. I guess I'm kind of doubling up on the Falcons. I'm going to switch this live. I'm switching out Drake London. I don't want to go Bijan and Drake. So that leaves me 6,900 that I have to spend on a player here. I don't like Marvin Harrison with how the Bears play. Could go Devontae Smith against the Jaguars, but I don't like that because of how much the Eagles have been running the ball. Don't like Devontae Adams on Thursday night. Oof. I don't really like any of these options. Chuba Hubbard, but I think Jonathan Brooks might be getting some carries this weekend, so that might take away from that. You know what? I'm going to go DJ Moore. I'm going to go DJ Moore at 6,500 going up against the Cardinals' bad defense. I need Caleb Williams to have a big bounce back game, but if he does, DJ Moore is going to be huge, play a huge role in the Bears' offensive performance. And then for the defense, I'll go the Titans at home. Their defense that I love. No unit I love more for some reason this NFL season than the Titans' defense. They're at home to the Patriots. Hopefully they can beat them up a little bit. All right, so there you go. That is my DFS lineup. Matt Stafford, Bijan Robinson, Austin Eckler, Puka Nacua, Wan'Dale Robinson, Troy Franklin, Cade Otton, DJ Moore, and the Titans defense. All right, thank you all so much for watching and listening. Be sure to subscribe to the Bacon Bets podcast on YouTube. Rate and review the audio version of this podcast. Check out and listen to the Road to 272, which was released earlier this week. I'm going to sign off here and watch the Yankees lose the World Series. It's the 9th inning. What a beautiful sight. Shout out Canadian for Freddie Freeman. People forget, represents Canada in the international competitions. All right, good stuff. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. Best of luck this weekend. Gamble or bless. I'll be back Tuesday. By the way, I mentioned in every show. Now I'm getting tweets saying I talk about it too much. I'm running the marathon on Sunday. So I'm going to miss the entire first slate of games. I'm going to try to send some updates. Check out my Twitter if you're not following me there already, at Iain MacBets. I'm going to run a little contest on Marathon Sunday, so check that out. All right, talk to y'all next week.